to the third day right now. Okay, let's just move ahead. We're still talking fuel subsidy removal, but this morning we will be looking at the economic question. When I look at a whole lot of things happening, the arguments, the debates, I begin to ask myself, what actually is the logical question we should be asking ourselves? Probably for those on the street protesting, or for those asking the government, you should do this, you should do that. What is the real economic question? Joining me to discuss this Wednesday morning, my guest, I will start from my far left, Tope Fasua. He's an economist. He's also the author of Crushed, I think I should say that, one good book that I have read, though he has accused me that I haven't read all of it, but I think I have. I used this holiday to do that. Tope Fasua, welcome. And this is the first time to do this year, isn't it?
Yes.
A happy new year to you.
Happy new year. Thank you very much. And thank you, viewers, as well.
All right. Chika Moses is close by. Chika Moses is a policy analyst. Mr. Moses, good morning. And thank you for joining us. A happy new year to you, too.
Thanks, Nancy, for having me. Happy new year, too.
But, of course, Nigerians woke up the new year, probably January 2nd, to find out that the price of fuel has gone up. At the NNPC filling stations, you get a liter of fuel for about 138 naira, and across board, other places, you get 141 naira. It's also been said that in other parts of the country, you get fuel, a liter of fuel as high as 200 naira. Let me start from Tope Fasua. How worried are you about the socio-economic shutdown that has been brought about by the removal of fuel subsidy? Of course, that was necessitated by the strikes right now by Labour. Are you actually worried? And if you are, how worried are you?
I'm very, very worried. Perhaps more worried than I've ever been, really, because it goes far beyond the issue of fuel subsidy into other issues that are affecting us. From the economic perspective, we've probably lost over 250 billion naira in the last 3 days. If you look at Nigeria's GDP at a conservative estimate of $400 billion,
yes.
Divide that by 365 days,
yes.
And we're talking of working days here now. So that means to an extent we should have like GDP of 1.2 billion a day. So if we've shot in a conservative 50% of that, because some states are, a bit busy, in the southeast, south. So let's shot in about 50% of that. And you realize that we're missing about $600 million every day. Then multiply that by 3, convert it to naira. When I did it, it was about $250 billion. I mean naira. In which case, if we continue like this for a little bit,
you also have to look at
more,
the sectors.
Exactly. Mind you, the petroleum sector may be working, okay, a little bit in the offshore. But the petroleum sector, people always make that mistake. It contributes about 22 to 25% to the GDP. And that can be worked out very easily. So yes, but let's just make it even a conservative 40% shorting of economic activity alone has cost us over 200 billion naira in the last 3 days. That's how it works. And if we continue like this for a few more days, we would have lost the 1 trillion that we're fighting about. So we would have lost it. Government would have lost the money. The people would have lost the money that we're fighting about. That's the worry. But because it also extends beyond the issue of fuel subsidy, what I see right now is a cry for help. A cry for help from government. A cry for help from the people. The people on the street are saying, okay, fine, we don't even mind this subsidy. But okay, maybe the timing is not right. Oh, don't give it to us all at once. We need help. But they're saying a little bit more than that. They're saying that, look, we need a restructure of governance. We need a restructure of society. We need help. If you take a look at the cross-section of Nigerians, what you see is poverty, disease, strife, death, and all those kind of things is what you see. And that's a result of several years of neglect, several years of lack of vision. The people are asking for a cultural change now. It occurred to me that just about 2-3 years ago, the World Bank was financing entertainment industry in Nigeria. Even as we speak, we still have allocations to finance entertainment industry. And it seems like we don't have advisors anymore. Or the other day I saw that, okay, another show is coming to Nigeria called Nigeria's Got Talent. We've got Big Brother Africa. We've got Big Brother Nigeria. We've got all sorts. So we're not even being directed in the right direction. That's what the young boys and girls on the streets are saying today to government, that look, it is not just about you. Indeed, I say, and I always say that the governance is not about government alone. Government cannot do it alone. My people say, that they just call some people foreman. One person can't do 4 people's job. You can call yourself foreman. You can't do people's job. Until the day government itself realizes that governance is not for itself alone, that nobody is looking for a magician, but that every Nigerian is yearning to be a president, to be able to take charge of his own life and take charge of his environment. That's what's going on. On the part of government, government is also asking for help. What I've been able to research, just yesterday, I wasn't quite sure what was going on myself. So, is it that government decides to bring this on itself? Why would they do that? And then later on, I now got some information on the internet that not only Nigeria and Ghana, but also a few other West African countries, Guinea, Chad, Cameroon and co, were also asked to take the same policy of subsidy removal at around the same time by Christine Lagarde, who is probably still in Africa as we speak. She was in South Africa. Yesterday, we got information that Malawi was asked to devalue its currency for the second time maybe in a year.
Last year.
I mean, just last year, And the Malawians are complaining as well. So now the issue is that Madame Lagarde was in town a few weeks ago, and she could have actually advised government on a few things. I researched into what she said, and indeed she was trying to, from the rhetoric, it was like, look, I need to advise you guys. 2012 is going to be terrible. And therefore, so she was probably advising them. Now the issue is, if she was advising them for the benefit of Nigeria or for the benefit of the IMF. However, IMF, World Bank suffers a deficit of trust from Nigerians, from Africans in general, because people remember 1986.
We'll come back to Madame Lagarde's visit, or however, it's been probably because of the advice, because I understand what you're saying. Ghana, other West African countries are also almost in the same boat like we are right now. Let me come over to Mr. Mozuzu. What actually should we be looking at right now? The government seems, at this point in time, not to adhere or listen, as it were, to the masses. The masses have been protesting. This is the third day. Government, from the posture of the government or the coloration of what we see from government officials, government doesn't want to back down. And Labour is also saying there is no going back except you revert to 65 naira, then we come to the table. Where do you now call it truce? Who we now begin to say, okay, fine, you need to drop your sledgehammer, you need to drop your hatchet. Where do we go from here?
Well, thank you, Nancy. And I've actually, I think it's something that one of the reasons why I went to school is to be educated on. And I think I've listened to all the arguments on the part of Labour and on the part of the government. Unfortunately, quite a number of people are missing the point. Appropriate pricing has been on the burner for a very long time. We just have to realize that.
Appropriate pricing in what sense?
Well, the petroleum sector, of course, if you look at it, where the petroleum products. What we are looking at is, we've talked about the Labour, you've talked about the government. All we need to do is to sit down. I mean, this is our country.
But don't you think, what people are saying, don't you think that the government, listen, hold on.
Yes.
Probably the government went with the speed of light, that we were not expecting it come January 1, 2012. Labour had already showed, okay, some form of commitment. We actually wanted to talk. We're still in negotiations, as it were. Then the government really announced that it needs to take...
No, Nancy, let's just understand issues. I want to distinguish between political revenge and genuine protest from the people. I think this is one important point that we have to really look at. I've listened to all the people have talked about IMF, talked about the World Bank. The critical issue is, if you had listened to the Minister of Finance or the Governor of Central Bank, or even some of the Labour people, I also took time to listen to the National Assembly on Sunday when quite a number of them spoke, those who spoke for the removal and those who spoke against the removal. I think along the line, you have some political connotation. And until we realize that this is an economic issue, I mean, let's just be very, very sincere with ourselves. Until we realize that this is an economic issue where we have to tell the truth. This is not a time for Marxist socialist rhetorics or the lexicon that we had those days of student unionism. This is the time of looking at the issue. Is this the right thing? Is it not the right thing? And then if you actually had identified these things, then you sit together and then you move on. And let me remind you, Nancy, in 2004, when the issue of fuel subsidy removal, I just want to bring a scenario that will just like tell you what has happened. That most times when you hear most Nigerians speak, we just have to be very sincere that what they tell us at night is actually what they go to say during the day. Because that's where you have the point. Now, in 2004, I want to give you two people that were there. First was General Babangida, and the other one was Adams Oshomole. In 2004, when this issue was discussed, General Babangida, and I quote, if you look at the comment of October 11, and he said that the issue of deregulation is unnegotiable. And I quote him, I think the government should be steadfast on the reforms. And I think you also note what he's saying today. Now, also Adams Oshomole, at that time, when he was the president of NLC, he said that the government, they was looking at it, that the tragedy is Nigeria has yielded itself to IMF. And then he went on to say that we must halt this policy framework that hurts the masses even more than it. We also know what they are saying today. The reality is that have we sat together to look at these issues, the pros and the cons? And once we have done that, we are going to move forward. Unfortunately, we have not done that. What you see is rallies, you have musicians who are singing. I don't think we are going to get anywhere with this kind of system, Nancy.
The question for me, which I'm asking, because for me, I've been watching the situation very closely, and I'm wondering, I'm asking two questions. I'm asking the government, how did we get to this point? One. And I'm asking Labour or those protesting, how much of this do we understand? My next question now to Mr. Fasua is, how much economics is being put forward on this matter? Like you said, this is not about politics anymore, but it's just about saying the truth the way it is right now.
Exactly.
Can Nigeria afford as a nation to continue this at the expense of what? Okay, or should we continue to a certain point, then we withdraw the subsidy? Does that make much more economic sense? For any economic sense, however you put the economics does not make that is right at all times. Yeah. But it depends on how you present it.
Certainly.
Okay.
So thank you for that. I mean, back to my earlier point very quickly, I say it's also a cry for help from government because on balance of evidence, I know that if I psychoanalyze the current president, I don't think he's such a wicked guy, a wicked man to just, do something that we know that we're extra sensitive to this issue of fuel, and that's going to bring down the economy to the level where it is today, not even for a day. There's a shot in. Therefore, I believe strongly that Mrs. Lagarde's visit to this country a few weeks ago had a certain amount of impetus. But you see, however, I'm saying that in my view now, I think that government should use the opportunity of the demonstrations in town to make a quick, to beat a tactical retreat and tell those guys that, look, give us a bit of time. Because I think what government said initially was by April 1st. And everybody was thinking of April 1st.
Still said that she didn't say April.
There's a lot of things, there's a lot of news going around. We have to pick and choose. So, but what people had in mind, what even Labour had in mind, that's why you had what you had in the House of Representatives. That even the members were not probably carried along. Now, as Chika said earlier on, this is a time for dialogue. But in terms of, it's a time for dialogue, clearly. And my appeal is both to government, to Labour, to dialogue. But, however, I think the government should first be tactical because it's not about politics entirely, as Chika had said earlier. No, it's not. It's about, you see, I say go out and look at the faces of people on the street. We keep forgetting. In this Abuja, as we speak today, there's so many slums. There's one opposite the former legislative quarters. There's one opposite Maitama, there's Gishiri. If you just go around town, go to Nyanya, go to Maraba, go to Jikoyi, 80% of Nigerians live in these places. It is possible for government not to see. Once you're appointed into government, you are surrounded by a coterie of advisors. Everything around you is looking chassis and neat and clean. You think Nigeria is making progress. No, Nigeria is not. I dare say, nobody can say Nigeria is making progress. My appeal now is that this must not be allowed to get out of hand. We have seen yesterday a mosque was touched in Benin, a few people killed. All this kind. We don't need this. You see, what is at stake is the continuity of the black race.
Now, do you think that people are actually protesting?
Even our so-called Nobel Prize winner went yesterday and said Nigeria is going to face a civil war. No. I dare say he shouldn't have said that. And I can take him up on that. But let's talk about the economics of it. No, let's talk about the economics of it. Okay. I have here with me a book by Professor Joseph Stiglitz, another Nobel Prize winner. In economics. Works. Okay, this is Making Globalization Work. This is a man who had been a director in IMF and World Bank. And also was for 8 years, he was the chief economic advisor to President Clinton when America was still good. And I'll just, show you a couple of things. Here he says that while developing countries were forced to abandon subsidies designed to help their nascent industries, advanced industrial countries were allowed to continue their own enormous agricultural subsidies, forcing down agricultural prices and undermining living standards of developing countries. Here he says, when the United States subsidizes cotton, global prices are affected. Farmers in the developing world are hurt because of U.S. generosities to its farmers. Economists call this externality. But if Jamaica protects its milk producers, global prices are unaffected. Moreover, developing countries have limited tools to deal with the consequences of liberalization. And what we're talking about here is liberalization of the fuel sector, the oil sector. Now, the last one, he said the aggregate agricultural subsidies in the United States, EU, and Japan, including hidden subsidies such as on water, okay, if they do not actually exceed the total income of sub-Saharan African countries, will be at least 75% of that region's income, making it almost impossible for African farmers to compete in the world market. The average European cow gets a subsidy of $2 a day. Listen again. The average European cow gets a subsidy of $2 a day. The World Bank measure of poverty. More than half of the people in the developing world live on less than that. It appears that it is better to be a cow in Europe, okay, than to be a person in a developing country. Now, that's from Stiglitz. Argue with that. He's got a Nobel Prize. I'm not sure there's any economist in this country that's as good as Stiglitz. And I stand by that. We don't have any Nobel Prize in economics in this country. If Stiglitz could have said that, meaning that subsidy itself, simpliciter, is not a bad thing. And usually maybe you want to subsidize what you have. You want to subsidize with what you have. So I'm not saying the subsidy should stay. United States, as a last year, Barack Obama, you put additional subsidy for the health sector because they found out that 40 million Americans couldn't go to hospital even when they were sick because they don't have health insurance. He added subsidy to it. Now I'm saying that let us not demonize subsidy. Fine, we can say we don't want the subsidy in the oil sector, but perhaps we want to have it in other sectors. But subsidy is not bad simpliciter. And people who have worked and promoted the issue of subsidy, Joseph Stiglitz himself was a disciple of the patron saint of globalization. That's Milton Friedman.
I'll come back to you, Mr.
Nancy, let me just also point out that if you had actually looked at the latest predictions of Joseph Stiglitz, then you would know that he's actually looking at the global economy. He's not really very, very comfortable with the way we are going at this point in time. Now, I've actually looked at the argument on subsidy. What is subsidy? And it is just a problem.